I've never done it on that one before, so apologies to everyone for all the noise. But hopefully the rest of it will go much smoother. So for anybody here, we have at the moment, we have Matt from Artisan Ale in France, and we have Phil from Crafty Bear, and I think I just saw Robin from Freddo Fox just coming in, so he'll probably join us in just a second. We'll just wait. Yeah, so we'll wait for him to join us. So yeah, so that's the plan today. We're just going to have a chat about beer, about brewing. Just no real theme. Just let's see everybody's experiences of beer, brewing, what they've brewed, what beers, and everybody's kind of exchanged some beers as usual. So we'll have all had a chance to kind of test out each other's beers and that. So Matt, you're actually the first French brewer to join us. We've had people from everywhere else, but you're the first one from France. So maybe we should start with you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. We are a French brewery. We are located in the Loire Valley, so a couple of hours south of Paris. We are a French-American brewery. I'm the French part of the equation. My wife is the American part. And we came back from the US in 2018. And we started the brewery in 2019, growing within our region organically, despite the couple of stop and go from COVID-1 and COVID-2 that really froze the country several times. And the outlook is good. The process that we try to implement, the beer that we are bringing to the market is well received. And it's a true honor to be with you guys today to just talk about beer.
Right. Well, yeah, so you started 2019, you said?
Yes, correct. Yeah. We opened the brewpub back in 2019. We are in a somewhat very small city compared to the production capacity that we have. But we decided to really implement the brewery in a part of France that's highly touristic. And the city that we are in actually has several royal castles. And that gives us a continuous flux of tourists, including American tourists and tourism coming from culture, which appreciate beer a bit more than the traditional and average French tourist.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is just like France and what the beer scene there is. It's obviously wine, the majority.
Yes. Well, it's a good question. We often refer to the French scene as very much like the wine American scene. The French scene still, and not everybody, of course, but the mass market here still see the beer in color. It's quite frequent, actually, on a daily basis. We have people walking through the brewpub just asking us for a blonde beer or a red beer or a stout or a brune, which is like a stout style beer. And over the last few months, couple years, people have started opening a little bit their vocabulary, and now they know what an IPA is like. So the French market is very, very far behind, and it's somewhat interesting to come from the US and try to somewhat adjust our speed to the French market while trying to pull upward the customers.
Right. Yeah, because I think just talking to other people who've come from, wine sort of areas, that they did seem to suggest the same thing, that people are, very set styles, I suppose, like you said, color. It's almost, it's this type of beer, and there is only that one type that is that color.
Correct.
But that once you got them onto trying beer, that was the big step. Once they were onto trying more beers, they were willing to try everything.
Yes, absolutely, and we are actually seeing that in our product strategy that we have, because the response that we had for a blonde beer was actually a beer from the cream ale category, and that beer is actually quite good to start converting industrial beer drinker toward craft beer without having too much bitterness, without having too much hop flavor. And now people are asking us to have a step between our cream ale and our IPA. So we recently added an American Pale Ale to our product line.
Okay, sorry, just noticed Robin is here. Yeah, so we have So we have the full contingent on now at the moment. So Robin, Matt was just telling us about the scene in France and how it's kind of, I don't know, not conservative, I guess isn't really the word, but maybe just hasn't tried a lot of the beers yet, and it's still just kind of opening up.
Yes.
But you actually have, I mean, you can tell us, like, I mean, you sent over quite a wide range. So you're brewing, like, are you brewing those for yourself? Are you brewing it that you think the market will try this, or is it just you have a small enough volume you're going to give it a chance? Or
Yeah, so it's a little bit of all. You're right. I mean, I appreciate the permanent product line that we have. Our chromatic, our iridescent, our pastel, our stout are actually good beer. And we know that this beer can actually sell on the market. But we get somewhat challenged by brewing more geeky beer. We like to have beer that are a little bit more in tune with what's happening worldwide. And so on seasonal beer, we are able actually to do 10 hectoliter or 20 hectoliter of beer, of a seasonal beer that will be brewed once, and then we can just sell that throughout the market, not to the same audience. We have a couple of access to a more niche market, and it will take us 4 to 6 months for some beer or 1 to 2 months for other beer. And we are able to do roughly 10 to 15 seasonal beer a year.
guys, just addressing all of you, was like, what's your market during COVID? Like, is it obviously hospitality didn't really exist? So how did you have to change the thing? You said you had a brew pub, and I think Robin, you have a brew pub as well, do you?
No.
Oh, okay.
We've got a tasting room.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it was just production was affected, but no bar and no taste room. What we did as part of the change of ownership of this brewery about a year ago was create a kind of showroom stroke shop, which is kind of the best we can do with our permit here in this particular part of town. So COVID really unaffected production for us.
And do you kind of, what's your market? Is it like for all of you, I suppose? Maybe Phil, you come in. Like, is your market very local? Is it
Yeah,
you exporting? Where do
quite
you
local for me. Definitely, like we're based in Dublin, so Dublin City itself, clearing that area a little bit down the countryside, which is kind of where we're, I suppose, trying to expand, and then a tiny bit export. I suppose export now is the way forward due to the recent COVID events. There was a lot of beer leaving the country rather than actually being drank in the country because, as you know yourself, the bars and pubs were shut down.
Where do you export the most?
I've only just started at very small amounts.
Okay.
Cans. Yeah, cans only. I moved. I was doing a little bit of kegging before COVID.
Yeah.
Because the bars that I was in were bottles and cans only, which was good. And, it's a better margin. But then naturally all the doors closed, so I stopped doing kegs completely and just stopped doing glass and just moved straight to cans. It was lighter and cheaper.
Yeah.
And we've only just started the keg again now.
Okay.
And you, Matt, are you like you have your brew pub? Are you selling to other pubs, or is it just within your own?
No, yeah, we actually have a distributor, a regional distributor that pretty much buys, I would say, 60% of our production. We were right around 1,000 hectoliter last year, and our regional distributor buys our bottle and keg beer, and they move that in the region that we are in. And roughly a third of our production is sold directly through the brewpub. Yeah.
Okay.
But we have also a different. We also do contract brews, so we have a couple of partners that just have an idea of a beer, but they want to have their own labels, And so with the production capacity, we are not quite at maximum production capacity. So we welcome really any business so far to help other brands grow. So that's how we try to really fill the gap and try to push a little bit more the equipment we have.
So what is your capacity?
Well, we can brew currently 2,400 hectoliter a year. But we also purchase some more vessels, surprisingly or not. But our brew house is American. We have a brew house from a company in North Carolina. But the price of freight has multiplied by over 20 over the last 2 years, that our fermenters have been ready for a year and a half now, but we just can't pull the trigger because cost was supposed to be 2.5 grand and it's now 17 grand. So we can't justify bringing the new vessel to the brewery. So yeah, difficult time.
I don't think it's going to get any cheaper by looking at things.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to cross Europe, so I hope that that route might open up. But still, you're right.
Fuel costs are just going through the roof.
Yeah,
obviously for obvious reasons, but I suppose we don't need to get into that. So I mean, you visited Robin during last week, was it?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we it was a purely business trip. Absolutely, it was our 15-year anniversary with Kelly, and so we needed a getaway. So we instead of shipping the beer to Robin, we decided to drive the beer, and also make time to catch up with Robin and have a couple of tasting. We tasted a fantastic beer from Freddo Fox, and we just got to get to know a little bit one another. So yeah, that was nice to be there last week.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So
when I apologize for coming in a little bit late, but I could hear when I did jump in that you were talking about some of the issues that we kind of we're talking about when we met a few days ago, actually. So about the different scenes and how they have evolved. So that was one of the big things we talked about while Matt and Katie were here. So that was good. It's a bit of a practice run for today.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are the scenes? What's the scene in Barcelona? Well, that's obviously.
I guess to simplify things, it sounded from talking to Matt like his market was behind the Barcelona market and how it's evolved. Because we talked about the styles. We talked about the styles we were able to brew if you're brewing for others and not your own pleasure, which is what we have to do when we've invested in equipment and we're brewing on a certain scale. You do have to think about other people's enjoyment of the beer when you brew it. I believe anyway. So here, it's just in terms of the craft beer scene, it's refreshing to see we're just starting to get away from almost a complete domination on taps, or in terms of people's understanding of what IPA is, being dominated by the hazies and the New England style, which is pretty dominant in Barcelona. Sometimes to the frustration of the people that actually brew them, because they can get, I know from speaking to some other brewers on the scene, they really love to get the opportunity to brew some more classic beer styles, and it's nice to see people. Some of the drinkers in town, at least, are now seeking those out and enabling us to include some more classic beer styles in our production plans. So it was great here at Freddo, for example, where we spent, really the first 9 months of Freddo's life, kind of plowing 2 furrows, fruited, really quite heavy fruited sours, and then the New England style IPA, whether that was a session strength or up to a double IPA level. So it's been nice to get the chance to go back to the recipes that kind of inherited from the previous brewery, that brand that kind of occupied this building, and brew some a couple of West Coast
Right. So how long? Sorry, just to get my picture clear there. So there was a brewery there, and you took it over. Oh, you're gone.
As well, which I never expected to brew in the first 15 months of life of Freddo Fox. So that's kind of in terms of our response to it. Much sooner being able to brew some classic styles because, the first 9 months, two furrows, the big hazies and the fruited sours, which are fun in themselves. It's good to kind of try to tweak and work them out, and there are enough variables to play with, even in those two styles, to have fun. Tweaking recipes and trying different combinations of hops and so on, and all the other variables that we get to work with. But that's pretty much where we're at, I think, in Barcelona.
And it was surprising, Robin. I have many good memories of our meeting last week, but there is something that you said that resonated so strongly and that I could not forget, and I was chewing on it days and days and days until now, which was when we opened the bottle of milkshake IPA, you said something which resonated truly, which was, it's kind of weird to open this beer style from a bottle, because you guys have been canning for a long time, and you are absolutely right that to me, I kind of have that behind the scene feeling, or in the back of my head, that's not right, but I never could articulate it. And when you said it, I kind of had this light bulb moment, and that was so true. And I was like, when can we? And we've been talking to canning supplier, including your canning supplier as well, Fernando. And we were like, when can the French market be ready for a brewery our size, a regional brewery, to do this type of product in a can? And not only for the geek market, not only for the market that is really up and up, but for the mass market. And I hope it's going to be soon, because I would like for our brewery to go there. And actually, when we arrived in 2018 in France, the first meeting we had was with the distributor that we have. And we came sure and confident. We were like, we are going to be canning. And they were like, no, don't can. For the market that you are targeting, if you can, you will never push any product, because canning for the French mass market, which we still target for the most part, it's a no-go. It's not a sign of quality. So, yeah, it looks cheap. Yeah, it's the homeless people beer style, right? So I was able, through the 15 years that I was in the US, to really see that come and go, that idea, and it became very niche. And now we start seeing it in France. We have most of the big brewery in France, the most popular, that fulfill exclusively to the geek market, that are canning. And we just hope that the rest of the market, the non-geek customer will actually get there too, because we are ready for it.
Yeah, I think it's like new enough in Ireland as well. I mean, it's obviously further down. It's still really only about 2 years where canning has really become accepted.
Yeah, 2-3 years. I found it actually hard to convert over. I'm actually a fan of the glass bottle. I was bottling originally the IPA in 500ml bottles, and I loved them. I always kind of felt that the beer sat better in the bottle, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Friends and family said the same thing. And I was slowly kind of pushed to move to can, because a lot of bars and restaurants adapted, in a sense, I suppose, like fridge space, cost. They start moving towards cans because their customer and their clientele base weren't so scared about having a meal and a can being put on the table. Whereas I know that's probably seen in certain restaurants that it would be forbidden. Yeah. It just wouldn't suit the atmosphere or the clientele. Now it's kind of, it's the last 3 years I've seen a lot of breweries move solely just to cans, and me included as one of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can correct me here, but I think there's been a lot of it as well, that it's mainly people understand because of the IPAs, the hops and that. If you're going to drink it fresh, a can is fine, but if you want to leave it aged, then the bottles are where you go.
Forward,
People like that. the can actually gives you a better drink if you're going to have something fresh.
Yep.
But I'll be honest with you, my thing, I fine with cans and that, but if I was going to a restaurant, I would still like to have the bottle on the table. I don't know. It's like I said, it doesn't. For me, it doesn't quite sit quite there just yet. But
Yeah, I
actually,
think there's definitely an aesthetic aspect to it. What Matt was talking about earlier on was sensation that I had when, as Edge, we brewed, which is the previous brand here was Edge Brewing. The first time we did a New England IPA, and we only had a bottling machine, and just the weird feeling that I got when I poured this heavy haze beer from a bottle into my glass, because I'd then, by that point, I got used to the hazy stuff coming out of cans. At a similar time, more or less the same time, I'd been handed a can of bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout, which was equally weird being poured out from a can, I guess from a brewery that only had a canning line.
Yeah.
And that was like, just aesthetically, it was a weird thing. So, and then one of the one things I liked about when Marcus came to the brewery and set up Freddo Fox was he chose the slimline version.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, which is I was like, well, okay, yeah, maybe this could, because restaurants, cafes, and gourmet eateries are like part of our market or our potential market. And I was like, well, having seen kind of like canned water and Schweppes and all that stuff in these kind of cans, which are a little bit more elegant, I thought maybe I can see these on tables, as well. So, but we'll see. It's
because
the next
that
frontier.
spoke to me about that, and that was one of my questions as to the reason. Just for in case anybody doesn't know, that's the type of can. It's a 33 CL can, but it's I'm going to use. This is what I would consider your normal 33 CL.
We've had some pushback on the format. By customers who are used to the other two formats, the 33 that you've just shown and the 44. And it's like it fits somewhere in the middle, but it's still a 33. But they're like, am I being conned here? They're trying to pretend to be a 44. We've had a couple of comments, a bit of pushback on it. It's not working as well as the other two formats, but that's in some kind of pockets, if you like.
And is it harder to get the cans? Because I have seen them, but like you said, only on things like kind of soft drinks and that. I've never seen it. I've never seen a beer in that can.
Yeah, about nearly a year ago, I heard it described as the candemic, which I thought was quite humorous. Quite humorous. Yeah, we did suffer a supply shortage about 11 months from now, which is quite frustrating because we just, we were a new brand, there was a launch, there was a sense of excitement, and the people on the team were kind of already known, and so we got the first round of beers out, and obviously the second round of beers are in the tank ready to go for the cans to arrive, and guess what, they didn't arrive. So that was the height of the pandemic from our experience. But I'm not the buyer on the team of the cans, but I've heard that there are times maybe it was harder to get some of the other formats, and maybe we'd chosen well in that respect. But as I say, I'm not totally on top of the ups and downs of supplies of cans. To be honest with you, one of my colleagues has been in the front line of dealing with those issues.
But for a brand, from a brand recognition standpoint, I think the size can that you have is so unique and so recognizable that you might actually get a lot of recognition from your customers and returning customers just because it's different looking. And the only other time I've seen these cans were in the US for the hard seltzer, which is not so big yet in Europe. So if I had to associate this can size now with a beer, it would only be yours with the black top portion of the can on a white can. You are sitting. I think the person in charge of the branding is doing a fantastic job to really.
Yeah. I'll pass that on because I suspect he's not listening. I think he's on
okay. It's actually.
I think it also gives you more space for your artwork. It kind of stands out, even though maybe technically it doesn't, but somehow or other it does. You seem to have more space for the artwork on it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why, part of the reasons why cans have succeeded with beer drinkers and new beer drinkers. Just that landscape opportunity compared to the bottle labels. With all the different configurations. The two label options and label on the front, label on the back, and it's like you're fighting for space.
Yeah, no, I've had some cans, and to be honest, like from various breweries, and I felt guilty throwing them out at the end of the day because some of them are pure artwork. And so just to come back, sorry, I'm going to just stay on you there for a second, Robin, because you said that your fruited sours, that they were something you started with, you're kind of moving away from. But the one you sent on there, I don't know what the others thought, like that fruited goes, I thought was beautiful.
Oh yeah.
I thought it had at least fruit I hadn't had in like that before. What was it, pear and apricot?
Yeah, raspberry, pear, and apricot. Yeah, it was delicious.
Yeah, the raspberry was the dominant fruit of those three, and the pear and the apricot were in there kind of to give some body. And
there was vanilla that just kind of eased it out a bit or something. I thought that was a really nice one. I could have drank that for
it's just using we use a really nice vanilla powder product, which kind of is practically is very useful to use, and you get quite good infusion. The flavors are really well, given how little you put in, given how expensive it is. I get the feeling that we do get some pretty good infusion from it, and it just it's the trick of rounding out the flavors, the fruit flavors with vanilla, which just adds that kind of perception of sweetness, and with the idea of kind of doing appealing kind of pastry like sours really, and throwing quite big quantities of fruit puree and some fruit juice into the fermentation. So.
And when you say pastry, is that very popular up there, like that area, like because you had a pastry stout as well?
I think we've made the bigger kind of pastry sour maybe a little bit popular in the immediate area of Barcelona. We did a collaboration with Southern Death, and as part of the interaction, we talked about the dosing rate of fruit, and basically Ollie got back and said, "Yeah, double it." And he just, so we ended up throwing literally a ton of fruit puree and juice, a kind of 33% proportions, and it was a really big success in the kind of geekier craft beer drinking circles, and it pretty much sold out straight away. So there is an appreciation in the craft beer scene in the city for fruited sours and sours in general, and in fact quite a long-running appreciation for more sophisticated sours, the barrel sours. There's been a long-running appreciation for like lambic beer and mixed fermentations and other barrel sour beers from that region of the world, and also from the States more recently. So depending on whether you're talking about that nucleus of long-running beer geeks or the circles that kind of developed around them. I've heard stories from friends who own bars of people that they've never met before going in and asking for a fruited sour straight off the bat. Local people. So it has begun, definitely, well and truly. In fact, one of Garage here describes one of their beers as a Barcelona Vice, which is a fruited sour on the much lighter end, because obviously the weather gets warm here. So, and that's what we'll be doing ourselves. We'll be perhaps taking down the fruit additions in some of those brews, and taking down the alcohol levels as well, so that people can imbibe a little bit more when the sun gets hot.
Right.
And speaking of which, Robin, I realized that most of the beer that you sent and some of the one that I tasted and came back with are quite high in ABV, or higher than I would see in the French market. I feel like most of them are actually the goes that Brian was talking about was at 6% ABV. But I think 6 seems to be the lowest you do when you go up to 10 and more. Do you feel like the market that you are living in is asking you for big beer, or is it just a way for you to differentiate yourself with the rest of the market?
I think it was partly about being a new brand and making an impact.
Okay.
You know, trying to make an impact in the first few months of the brewery's existence. I think it's also to do with the size of the can. Possibly, this might just be in my imagination, but I know from my own experience when I've kind of helped myself to cans from the fridge, and you know they've been on the lighter end, I've been like a little bit frustrated that the can's been emptied so quickly.
Yes.
Not too much of a problem for me because I just go again. But yeah, that might be a factor. And also we do export quite a bit. We're quite export heavy, so you know I think perhaps maybe importers favour the stronger end, maybe because better stability, maybe stability. Yeah.
Because all your beer, as strong as they can be, they are all extremely balanced. And including the Imperial Red that we got from Crafty Beer, I find no alcohol. Yes, no alcohol.
I don't have a
hint. It's really all working well together. The Imperial Stout that we had last week together was mesmerizing, and I brought back a can for a friend who does a lot of research and development on beer, and he was just extremely impressed. So high ABV with all this balance is very orgasmic in terms of tasting.
Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, to be honest with you. But
no, don't say that.
But yeah, but talking about the alcohol content, so I didn't actually take too much attention, but now you mention it, yeah, they're all reasonably. I mean, I'm not going to open it now, I think, but you had a triple IPA there at 9.5%. I'm going to leave it for the afternoon until later. But yeah, even like Phil, yours were all 6% or so.
Yeah, the majority. I went a bit high, I suppose, last year with the red and the stout, 7.5%, 8%. I will do a 10 down the line, but I was getting ahead of myself, I suppose, because I do like the stronger, darker beers, but I realised that only a small majority in Ireland, and a certain time of the year as well. So October, November, December, you'll see people like my sales for the heavier beers will go up and my IPA will go down, and vice versa down in the summer. So then, yeah, I kind of start coming back down again, and then I found 6% and 4.5% to be the new norm coming out of the winter, moving into more kind of brighter months.
Yeah, because talking sorry, just having like these suggesting that I have noticed that there's some countries where the really high ones where 10% seems to be kind of the normal, whereas in Ireland there does seem to be more of a session. The thing you have to have a few beers over the night, because if you have one,
it's very seasonal in Ireland at the moment. The last couple of years, I always find that winter months is your darker and higher ABVs. Your summer, your sessions and your lagers, and it bounces in between them, and then sours as well. Sours have become a big thing during the summer now in Ireland. Last year, just gone. Breweries that never have done a sour have all attempted. Some very, very good results and some not so good results. So it's it's constantly evolving. But I am a bit of a fiend for the higher ABV, all right.
And I personally, I like it too. And unfortunately, I can't always brew what I like because we, for example, our iridescent IPA, which is our permanent IPA, when we designed it originally, we were at 7.2 ABV. And Yeah, no, actually, this one is the Spectrum. It's a seasonal. Our iridescent IPA. When we came out at 7.2, the market told us it's great. Can you make it in the 6? And we're like, well, yeah, we can make it in the 6, but why? Like 6.9, which is where we are now, instead of 7.2. What's the difference for you? But there is a perception for the market that we are in. And granted, the French market is not the same throughout France, because in the northern part of France, they don't drink anything that's less than 8. Or we have had some brewers that came and visited us and were like, where are your beer? Like, that's for kid. I was like, well, that's what we got to brew. But the rest of the market for the Loire Valley, where we are, it needs to start with a 5. 5 is the number. Between 5.0 and 5.9, that's where they feel comfortable drinking, because they are very concerned about driving, and I guess they are very, very cautious with that. And we see it at the brewpub too. People sometimes, the first question asked is, what's the lightest beer? And they make a decision based on the ABV. And I'm very puzzled by that, but that's the truth of our market. So that's what we got to deal with.
No, I think it makes sense, especially like you said, if you're driving, like,
Yeah.
But even here, I mean, sometimes sit down and you fancy a beer in the middle of the week, but you don't want 10%. Like, you want the next morning, you want 1 or 2 and make it last the night and get up the next morning with a clear head.
And it was actually, we were talking about that with Katie, the co-owner of the brewery, and my wife. She was like, also, it's kind of, and maybe that's the American side that's talking more, I would rather sell 2 6% ABV beer than 110. And I was like, yeah, that's a good business model too.
I actually thought it would have been the other way around, that they would have wanted more alcohol just from wine,
Yes.
That's where I would have thought it would have come down from, that
Yeah.
would have been closer to wine. But I guess so. Go on.
No, I was saying you rarely drink a pint of wine, though.
That's true. I don't know how rare some people are, but
yeah.
This is very nice, by the way.
Cheers.
Don't get to taste many of your being Moorish.
Yeah, it's dangerous. On this particular batch, actually, we dropped to 7%. It was just a mistake, but it's normally 8. And there's not much. Surprisingly, there wasn't much of a difference between the percent. I find it very hard to believe that they both tasted the same with the 1% decrease. But it's hard to pick out the alcohol in it, and that's the dangerous part, I think.
And how did you do sales-wise? Was it something that was?
So it actually the red became probably the second best seller until the Belgian Blonde came out. But it's still a good contender, like the stout, it's a little bit seasonal at times. Like, I find that I sell most of it kind of, I suppose, the winter months. I do sell a bit during the year, but I can sell 2-3 batches, in October, November, and then only sell maybe 1 batch then during the rest of the year. So it's just one of those kind of beers that, like, it keeps its head above water. And of course, I'm a big fan of it as well myself. So I have to stop drinking all my profits.
Yeah, how do you figure out core ranges? Do each of you have a core range and then just brew seasonally, or like specials, or do you just brew kind of, brew, like you said, like seasonally? Your reds will just only come out in thing, or your stouts will only come out there. They're not really core. So
I've kept mine. Yeah, I'm keeping the core of I think all the beers you guys would have received, minus one. There's a pale ale that just wasn't in stock, so I couldn't send it to you guys. So that will be my core going forward, with likes of the Belgian Blondes, the pale ale, and the IPA kind of being the biggest sellers throughout the whole year, with the red, the stouts, and the porter kind of, always ticking away in the background and picking up then in the winter months. And then we're only starting to do seasonals now, because where we were based and where we were kind of the point in our business at that stage when COVID hit kind of gave a bit of a kick in the teeth. So I didn't get to, I suppose, experiment more than we should have, and it slowed things down. So the rest of the core range wasn't ready. So now it's out. It's doing well, and the seasonals now will start. So I think we're a little bit behind probably than you guys.
And both of you, like Robin and Matt, you have a core range as well, is it? And then just brew.
No, not really. We possibly we've possibly found our first core, like a pale ale, like a modern pale ale, and that's possible. It's just because, yeah, a little bit like the model for Freddo Fox that we thought about was, just responding to the kind of the market that says, great, really enjoyed that. What's next and what's new? And so we spent the first 12 months just brewing a different beer every time. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier on, ploughing through furrows, so not reinventing the wheel every time you brew, but we were doing 5.5, 6.5, 8.5, new hazies essentially. I mean, we put New England on there, but hazy IPAs, double hazy IPAs, and so I think we, as part of we're 1 year old, and maybe also partly of reading the market a little bit and responding to requests from our local sales guy for Barcelona and some parts of Spain. Like I mentioned earlier, on restaurants and so on, and eateries that want maybe something a little bit more stable. So we're starting to look at maybe our first core beer and maybe another one behind that, a pale ale and maybe an IPA. But that's kind of happening right now, really, being evaluated right now. We're only a year old.
Right. So like obviously COVID hit yourself and hit all of you because you're all pretty much in the year to 2 year range. So it just hit in the middle of things. I suppose it threw any plans out really.
Yeah, it's pretty dynamic right now.
Yeah, in our side too, we have actually 4 and 2.5 permanent beer. We have 4 beer that are constant, that are always brewed, and this is more of a demand for bar and restaurants that they don't have to re-educate their ongoing customers. And then we have 2 half permanent. We have our amber beer and a white wheat beer and hoppy. It's a white IPA, truly. These 2 beer are seasonal. They are only brewed for 6 months out of the year, and they just because the weather and the people are just more in the mood during the summer to drink wheat beer, and during the autumn and spring to still drink some amber beer, and that's why we have an American amber ale. But these 5 permanent beer total is not so much a willingness for us to continue to brew the same cream ale all the time, but we have established and very good customers of ours that cannot change their menu as fast as we would like to brew beer. We are very fortunate to have a few very highly regarded customers, including some amazing castle in the Loire Valley. And these people just want consistency. They want to have the same defect-free, no off-flavor quality beer that they can keep on providing to their mass market customer. So we have been brewing, like I would say 80% of our production are the same beer all the time.
Yeah, that's again, I suppose that goes down to the market, because we've had brewers on here like Arpus from Latvia, and they're 80%. Actually, no, they're more like 90% export, and basically they never brew twice because their market is just we just want a different beer, a new beer.
Yeah. And I fully connect with that. I myself, when I was going to the US, I mean, when I was living in the US, the beer scene is so wide that a brewery has to never brew twice the same beer, or they lose that single customer. And when I was in Los Angeles or in the south of LA, we could every week go to the same brew pub and never drink the same beer twice. And that's how they can keep customers like me back then interested in going back week after week after week, just because you are blown away every single time. And I wish we would be in that environment, but we are not.
Sorry, but I suppose, yeah, I mean, I can see where you don't want to brew the same thing because it kind of just becomes a chore. But
yeah,
again, there's something about being able to kind of perfect a certain beer.
Yes. Yes.
That's, I mean, take any year beers there. Like if you're able to just kind of tweak it and tweak the next batch and tweak the next batch from any of the three of you, do you think that you kind of, you will always make it better, or do you think there's beers you're doing now that's perfect?
Oh, I don't know. Perfection is quite in the beer holder mind, but I think we improve over time. But I think we got to a point now where one lot of one beer and another lot of the same beer for 99% of the people is going to be quite the same, even if we lose half a degree in the mashing process, or if the hop is 2 months older than the last time, you won't make that much of a difference. Once you have your quality process checked, when you have all your brewing process in line, when you, calibrate your meal every single time, or when you have the right things done at the right time, I think after a bit you can be quite consistent.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking kind of the corollary of that, I suppose. It's like, yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, where, say, in the past, the brand was the brewery. So you had Guinness, one beer,
yes,
brewery, one thing. You had Carlsberg, one beer, the brewery was named after Heineken and all of that. Whereas now it really is the brewery, and people look for the brewery, and you can, if you've got your brand built and you've kind of got your reputation, I guess you can brew whatever you want and someone will give it a try. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the experience of Edge as well as Freddo Fox. With Freddo Fox, the idea is that Freddo Fox comes first before, obviously, we brewed one beer twice, and that's just very, very, very recently. So the idea with Freddo Fox is, that people see Freddo Fox on the board and they'll say, right, yeah, I trust that to be decent, and that's what we're aiming for. I trust that to be decent, and I'll part with my seven euros for a pint kind of thing, and enjoy it. Hopefully, down to the bottom of the glass would be even better, and repeat. But with Edge, I had some experience of brewing core beers, and maybe the IPA, which was brewed for pretty much from 2014 to the end of 2020. Well, no, sorry, COVID. Yeah, forgot about that. Was brewed pretty much non-stop throughout the project. That was a pretty strong name. I mean, Optimista was obviously a pretty good name for its time as well. And it covered the kind of all the languages: English, Spanish, Catalan. So, in terms of consistency, one of the challenges sometimes is if you haven't got everything contracted, is that you're sometimes not able to be 100% consistent with your ingredients if you haven't contracted the hops from here to the end of, and then obviously you've got different harvest years, and then maybe it's generation 3 yeast or first generation, and so there are a lot of variables that play to challenge, I think, a craft brewery to be super consistent. Having said that, I mean, the blonde ale we did, and Optimista, and the session IPA, they were pretty consistent. But when it came to brewing this pale ale recently that I just talked about, I was actually quite nervous after this past year of brewing a different. Been kind of let off the hook, really, to some extent, because every beer's got a new name, it's got a different. Right. You kind of let off the hook of consistency in terms of like it got to taste like the last time it was brewed. So I was really nervous because actually the first brew really kind of, especially for the small grams per liter, the small dry hopping rate, I was like, can we do this again? You know, like, and it's more or less there, but yeah, the 2021 hops have come on, and that would account for a slight difference in flavour the second time we brewed it. Also went from a double batch to a single batch because the double batch was brewed because we had a buyer, and then it's gone down well in the local market, which is important, but doesn't necessarily justify brewing a double batch. So we slotted in a single batch, and that can change the dynamics of the fermentation and so on. So yeah, consistency is something that I think the mass brewers with the laboratories and everything contracted tend to do better, even if it can be a little bit boring.
Would you not then like do what some of the brewers, especially more like the lambic and the barrel age, you know, have a year and make a point or make a virtue out of the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what we were doing to begin with. We were like, okay, the market wants, or a certain sector of the market wants constant change and something new all the time. Well, here it is. You know, this is what we're doing. And like I say, a little bit let off the hook of like having to have this batch taste like the last batch. You know?
Yeah, that seems like something, I don't know, Matt, that like, you know, vintages of wine and that, you know, they'd be used to it in France, that you could, you know, you want your customers who want the consistency, but you could market it as vintage 2021 or 2022, and they might accept that, would they?
Yes, that's definitely something that even we see, because when we opened the brewpub, we did not have any wine. We only had beer because shit, we are a brewery, right? And then pushed by the local demand, we started doing wine. And people were criticizing more the wine that we had than the beer that we had. And they were like, oh, this bottle doesn't taste like the same of the previous bottle. And I was like, man, look, they are the exact same label, exact same vineyard, exact same years. Oh yeah, but I get more cork on this one. And I was like, then drink beer. I don't know what to tell you. You come to a brewery and you will not even recognize a pale ale from an IPA, and that's fine. That's fine. But you tell me that one of my wine is corked, it's like, man, just drink beer. And so having held the brewpub at first for the first year, I mean on and off because of COVID, was quite interesting to really understand the customer, I guess, perception of the beer and the consistency of the beer, because back in 2019, when we were brewing our chromatic back-to-back, we had to get the equipment really under control, and different machine temperature sometimes was not as smooth as it is currently after a couple of years of experience. And I definitely thought that people would realize that our market, again, it's different, I'm sure, in Dublin or in Barcelona, but in Amboise, France, the people could not really identify the consistency in the beer. But as we are growing now, we, for ourselves and for the customers that are outside of our direct brewpub, want to bring that consistency. But you're right, to answer your question, sorry, I took a long way to answer the question. The European, or the French market would definitely realize that there is variations between one bottle to another, even if it's the same lot, because it might not age the same, because it might not be kept the same, because the chain call might not be respected the same, and it might be aged in a cave or not in a cave or more sun. So that's where actually we are thankful to be in the environment that we are in. It's because the French market can be very forgiving and very understandable. I mean, look at the French people. We can eat one cheese every day throughout the year without eating the same one twice. Mm-hmm. And yet, that's the people that see the beer in color. They will tell you, I want a blonde beer, but they will never eat the same cheese throughout the year. So they can be educated. They can be very gastronomic when they want to be. but we just need to up the game of beer for them to catch up.
Yeah, I think that's similar in Spain, or at least in Barcelona. And with the food culture, it can be a little bit frustrating. You've got this tremendous appreciation for food, and yet what craft beer or cerveza artesana has been trying to do for a long time now is to educate people that there's more than one kind of beer out there, and there's more than one way of enjoying beer. There's still the dominant way of drinking beer in Spain is the caña, and it's got to be blonde and fizzy and so on. So, but contrary to that, yeah, you've got this rich gastronomic culture, and so possibly it's why there's been an acceptance of, or an interest in sour beers amongst foodies and curious eaters and drinkers in the area. So it's happened kind of quicker than maybe it should have done if we were supposed to be on the American craft beer path. We had American visitors over the years who said, well, in 5 years you'll get into sours. Well, no, 18 months later or 6 months later, it was more compressed, as the diversity was offered to people.
And Phil, how do you think that works? Because I mean, not to shoot anybody down, but I'd say like Ireland doesn't have the same gastronomical reputation as France or Barcelona.
No.
But like you're selling into restaurants as well, though. So is there that acceptance? Like that was your first market, I think you said, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the first market was a combination of bars, restaurants, hotels. It was a chain of, I think they had like 45 premises. I was actually quite lucky. That's kind of where my start came from, and that's why the glass bottle was a big deal, because we were like, no, we want glass on the table, not can. The food side of things in Ireland are it's becoming a bit more acceptable to go out and do, to have your beer with your meal rather than wine. But what I'm finding funny now at the moment is you probably have the same thing with you guys with the app Untapped. Do you guys? I don't know you guys use it or not, but it's become a quite popular app here in Ireland. But I'm finding a lot of people that who are either getting into craft beer have decided to go for extremely hoppy or extremely strong ABV or extremely sour, and then like rate it really poorly and say, I'm giving it 1 star because I don't like sours.
Yes.
And then you read the beer label, that's posted, and it clearly has a massive print of sour on it,
Yeah, we had one of these. We did a Berliner Weiss that had pineapple, so clearly it's a sour beer, right? And somebody says, I don't like sour. This is too sour. I was like, well, if you don't like sour, just don't buy that beer.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a bit of a culture we have here at the moment as well, where they're all for getting, to get the app. They start going to craft beer bars. They're enjoying, but they came from a very, I suppose, macro background. They love their Guinness, they love their Heinekens, they love their Budweisers, and so on. And they've kind of dived in, maybe a bit too deep, kind of a bit too bold to be picking up such a beer and then stating, like posting, I don't like stouts, and it's like you just bought a stout. So yeah, that's kind of, we're tackling that, I suppose, here at the moment, which is it's fun. It's a great. I log in quite often just to read some of the reviews from not only my own brewery but from many others in the city, and it's kind of a laughing point now where it's like everyone at some stage gets a review where it's like, I don't like this style of beer. Well, you bought,
Yeah. We got a 0.5 star recently for a beer reviewed last week, which expired a year ago. And granted, beer don't really expire, but when you taste hoppy beer past 6 months, it's really the limit that you should not be drinking it. And people say even like 3 to 4 months. So let alone when we have a 1 year best by date and they drink it a year after that, I'm like, come on, people, just like It's
Yeah, but
difficult.
people
No
just
one's
don't.
reading the label.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, they're
Exactly.
picking it up and going, "That's
Yeah.
new. I'll take it." You know,
Yeah.
check
But it's
expiry.
also like, how do you manage? I mean, that must be the killer. Like, you're producing this beer that when it comes out, you know is excellent. Then
Yeah.
you lose all control over the distributor, where they
Yeah.
keep it, who, whether the drinker keeps it properly, whether they drink it too cold, too hot. Like, you
Yeah.
have no control over the
Yeah.
final product.
Yeah.
I think that's something that myself is going to try is give it this. There is a brewery in Ireland that does it, and they do it very well. Hope, and they do a lovely label. They have, you know, it's a picture of a hand, but it's pointing towards the, you know, the bitterness, the style of food that goes with it, you know, the date. So it gives you like the 4 or 5 key things you should know about the beer before you consume it. And naturally, like the date is quite prominent. You can see it very easily from the moment you read the bottle. And I think that's something I'm going to move into, to redesign slightly part of the label and have that aspect of a kind of a guide down the side. And the same thing as well, please consume after, you know, a certain amount of time. But I suppose the only other way around would be to have a stock list of your suppliers that are, you know, that are buying from you,
Yeah.
and touch base with them, you know, quite regularly and see what sales are like. I'm doing currently with 2 suppliers that things are going a little slower than I'd like. And I'm willing to, you know, if things don't work out, I'm willing to kind of go in, remove the stock, and get fresh, and try, you know, a better campaign to help both their sales and my sales.
Mm.
But you know, it's I suppose it's trying to find time to do that for 100 different customers would be difficult. So I think, you know, a bit more awareness on labeling as well. You know, what the beer is about, and the sell by date. Like as you said, you know, IPA. You know, it's best drank within 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
You know,
I've seen that on some people. They just have like do not age, drink fresh, and
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is
Like
not a collectible. Just drink it, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the
Buy a
label
beer,
if you want, but don't keep the beer.
Yeah.
sit on it for 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah. So sorry, just to come around there to that. So if you're like, if that's, you were saying like people coming from say drinking Heineken and they're going to jump straight into the, you know, a 10% high, you know, triple IPA or something. So that's a, none of you had actual kind of lagers in your range, do you? That would seem to be like, you know, the blonde is probably the closest.
Yeah, I dropped my lager for the time being, as it sold well, but it sold well in the bars and restaurants. And then with COVID, I'm kind of losing a couple of clients due to that, with places closing. I just took a step back with it because it wasn't a strong in Ireland. It's not a very strong contender unless you are Heineken or, you know, the big guys who've been doing it much longer. So I deliberately, I let mine drop off for the next while. I'm going to revisit it now, probably maybe in the summer.
Right. How about you?
An ex-colleague of mine is Edge, brewed a delicious Pilsner. And the craft beer bars, apart from one, weren't prepared to pay the price for it as a craft Pilsner.
Okay.
So that was probably
Yeah.
3 to 4 years ago. We currently don't have any plans to brew a Pilsner. The nearest thing we did was a very small batch of Kolsch, like 350 litres of it. The nearest thing we've got to is Freddo Fox, and that went into kegs only for kind of our own enjoyment with friendly bars and little events and things like that.
Yeah, we had Basqueland were on a few weeks ago, and he was saying that that's what, you know, that they're into, you know, again trying to pair food with beer. But he said, like, as the brewers, if they weren't brewing lager, he'd lose all his brewers because that's all they'll drink.
Yeah, and on our side, we agree with Robin. What we sense is we cannot brew a lager and expect our customer to pay the price of a craft beer. They would associate lager with Heineken and Kronenberg here and all that. So we still needed a beer that was a bridge to the more traditional craft beer for the rest of us. So we decided to go with a hybrid beer, and we thought about the Kolsch, the way Robin said it, but we settled on a cream ale. And the cream ale is the beer to this date, and last night again at the brewpub, is the most sold. And it's surprising. It's nothing against our cream ale, but I drank half a pint after I mowed the lawn, but I could not drink more than that. I need something with more body and more character. But the cream ale is very, very important in our product strategy. With this being said, we have only recently started a lager series, but again, we cannot do a traditional pils. And I think the one I sent you guys were the smoky lager. So it's a smoked LS, finishing at 2.2 plateau, so a little bit sweeter and rounder than a traditional pils. The second one that we are bottling on Monday is a hoppy pils. It's a single hop series with laurel, so very peppery and citrusy. And the final one of the series will be a cold IPA, which is definitely on the rise in the US. And we want to give it a shot with a experimental hop named Vista coming from Washington State. And that's going to be a 7 ABV with 30% of the grain, of the bill grain with rice flake to really minimize the body of the beer. We are going to lager it for 6 weeks in our bright tank and dry hop the shit out of it to get a ton of aroma and length. And that's the only way we believe that we can bring a lager to our market and justify the price point that we're going to ask our customers.
But you have to, you have to differentiate that it is not different.
Yes.
Even if you're trying to bring it some bit towards it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, in Ireland, it's probably a bit different now, Phil, because they've now brought in minimum pricing on beers and stuff.
It's crazy. I went to the off license for the first time. I only got back from holidays, so I wasn't here for the changeover originally. And where I was on holidays, like beer was for nothing. So when I got back, I went to the local off license and I tried to get a bottle of wine and a bottle of whiskey because I had family coming over for an event. And there was like a €7 increase on the wine, and there was like a €4.5 increase on the whiskey. And I was just like, I just thought maybe the shop itself had increased, and it took me a moment to kind of recoup and go, okay, we've decided that, depending on the spirit or the wine, a certain amount has increased. So for a person that was drinking cheap white or red wine, or was getting like an 8-pack of beer, has now had to pay a slightly more premium price, so it's no longer affordable for the lower end of the beers. The craft beer doesn't seem to have made much of a difference. I've actually seen a few places decrease the prices because they were always a little bit above the Heineken's, Budweisers, and all the Guinness, So I think it's going to actually have a positive repercussion on the craft beer scene. But the deals like the 8-packs, the 10-packs, the 12-packs, the wine and the spirits are going to suffer badly.
Right. Yeah, because the price of drink in Ireland is a lot more than France or Spain. It's
I think it's a little bit of greed, if I was to be honest. I come from a bar background as well, so I do understand there's a lot of hidden costs, but it's the percentage that the person that is running the business that they want really determines, what they're going to charge. We have an area in Ireland which is called Temple Bar. You may or may not have been to it before.
Yeah.
And they charge like almost €2 extra per pint on the exact same beer you can get within a 5-minute distance away. And there's no justification for it. It's only because it's a tourist spot, So the fact that they're able to decrease their pints to a reasonable price on, the suburbs and so on, but in the more busier spots, they're charging crazy prices. $7.50 for a Heineken is just. Whereas, fair enough, craft, I understand you might get a 330ml, 7.5%, 8% IPA or hazy, but there's a lot more on empty. There's a lot more, flavor, a lot more hops, a lot more yeast grain, so on. So the beer itself is worth more. The macros are just, I suppose, they're just pumping the profits.
Just something occurred to me there. So, you mentioned Matt, that you sell a lot. You have a large tourist kind of attraction there, but it's the same. I mean, obviously Barcelona is huge tourists, and Dublin is pretty high tourists as well. Do you see? Do you try and split out to get the tourists, or do you think you're selling more to tourists than the locals, or how do you
So
do
yeah,
the balance?
so we have a seasonal affect, absolutely. We are working very, very hard to lock down the local. But the local, we live in a city of 12,000 inhabitants. So the middle of the winter is quite difficult in comparison of the summer. The only reason why we can really pass the winter the way we do is because the city is so small that all the other bars in town are closing for 2 months. So you gotta love the French for that, right? Only them can shut down their business for 2 months out of the year. So the American culture says, you know what? Not only we're going to be open, but we're going to be open 6 days a week. So we get known by all the people who really want to come out, not by choice, but because that's the only way they can go have a beer or go have a drink. So we get known, and we try to really get the brewpub very, very dynamic. We do some trivia night, some lotto night, we do karaoke night. We really try to make the local feel good. But we are within 100 meters of the exit door of the royal castle of the city. And that drains roughly 1 million tourists a year. So we are within 100 meters of the 1 million tourists. And out of that, most of them are American, German, Dutch, coming from Belgium, coming from Spain, coming from a lot of beer culture. And fortunately, the people coming from a beer culture have the reflex to Google simply and research beer place. So the first year in 2019, from opening until 6:30, 7 o'clock, we were speaking exclusively English at the brewpub. And that was great because all the French people arrived somewhat around 7 o'clock. And so we really had 2 shifts. All international tourists who tend to eat a little bit sooner than the French people. And then we had all the French people coming out, and then the people who finished dinner coming back. And it was a great year, but we actually didn't know because that was our first year open. So we hope that this summer is going to be back the way 2019 was. But we do indeed, again, to answer the question, try to target the local during the winter so that they are a year-round customer because we need them in the winter. And during the touristic season, which is really from mid-June to mid-September, we try to be very present on TripAdvisor, Google, and a lot of tourist website or app to bring these people to the brewpub.
So what you're doing as well, I know you don't have a pub as such, well, either of you, Bill or Robin, but are you trying to do something, or do you just brew what you think is good and not know who gets it?
Go on, Phil.
You want to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I've just come from a pub background, and I'm going to give it a bit of a break for a while, to be honest. It was a lot. It was, I suppose, like 10 and a half, 11 years with one particular company. It was intense, nightclub, bars, and restaurants. So I do respect people that have bars and brew pubs. It's a lot of work. I would love to look at it down the line as a new part of the business, but for the time being, no, I'm going to continue brewing. And I suppose Ireland is evolving now as it's opening back up after COVID, and I do see a couple of new bars that are opening that are going to try alternative concepts. And there's 2 that I'm currently watching that are pretty cool, that I like, and I'd love to see do well. And I suppose if they do well, it might inspire me a bit more to take a leap and create the perfect, I suppose, crafty beer brew pub bar scenario. But
Would that be tourist targeted, or would you just hope? Would you be aiming
A little
local?
bit of both. You know,
benefit?
I like the idea that Matt has. You know, with the I do love a good local, you know, a good local bar where you almost celebrate the person's birthday because you know them by the first name. You know, they might have their family event with you. You know, birthday of the mother or the father or so on, or the kids, and it's kind of like it's a very community. You know, it's a lovely feeling to be involved and to know people that way, and that's the kind of business I'd love to have. It's just, I suppose, for me now, it's just finding the best location because Dublin City is, you know, it's a busy spot. There's a lot to contend with. You know, if you don't do it right from the beginning, you know, you kind of leave yourself open for failure. So it's finding the right place at the right time. I think for now is my goal really for the time being. But sorry to go back to the tourist side of things. Definitely would love to have a mix of both worlds. You know, tourists by all means it's a great source of revenue, but I do love the local culture a bit. Right, I suppose I'd side a bit more. We're having a kind of more of a local vibe.
Right.
Yeah, the not only source of revenue, but just so you know, the French market is so behind again on the beer scene that our banker eventually told us that the only reason why they follow us to invest in the brewery was because of the margin that the brewpub was going to create. Today, if we exclude most of the sales that we do with our distributor, we would be financially stable exclusively with the brewpub sales because of the margin. And that was very interesting to hear that out of 9 banks, only one follow us, and we had 50% of the investment made with personal funds. And we were very mesmerized that the banker in France would tell us, the only reason why we follow you is because of the potential sales at very high margin. And I was like, damn, that's unbelievable. So,
Yeah, so don't set up just a brewery.
yeah, no.
I'm in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, we've had you for quite a while now, so I'm going to let you go in a minute. I'm just going to ask you one question that I've been interested in asking people. So you've all had, I mean, what you've sent over, there's a lot of IPAs, a lot of stouts, and actually some very, very good stouts, I have to say. I didn't mention them there. Ranging from, you know, from kind of a dry... Well, what was yours, Matt? It was kind of a dry stout.
Yeah, it's more of an export stout, but we can't say it on the bottle because people wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But what we are shooting for is an export stout. It's drier with coffee notes,
Yeah.
no flavoring up, just dryness, dry out a little bit the palate and make you want to just sip again.
Yeah, whereas it moves through then, like, I mean, look at the three, there was kind of like a range. There was yours at one end, there was Phil's, yours was kind of in the center with and then there was the big pastry stout at the other end. It was I tried them all on the one night and I started on what I thought was.
Yeah.
How did you function after all three?
I don't know. I tried. I suffer for everybody, but yeah, no, but it was interesting. But anyway, sorry, bringing that back around. You've all had a stout. You've all doing IPAs and that. Is there any sort? I mean, you've kind of hinted at this, like you want to brew something that you'd like to brew, but sometimes your market doesn't allow you. Is there anything that you haven't brewed yet, any style that you really want to brew, but either circumstances or the market just haven't let you, but you know, you just don't think you can sell it, or you don't have the facilities at the moment? Is there anything that you really want to brew? Any style?
For me, Italian Pilsner. I'd love to. I love the sales people in sales to say, yeah, go ahead. We can. I think we can do a Pilsner now. You know, I went back to that story where they didn't quite work out, not because of the quality of the beer, but because the market not being prepared to buy the price. Whether things have changed now, or whether the Freddo Fox brand permits it to do a Pilsner, particularly either an Italian Pilsner or a hobby Pilsner, I guess, or maybe even with some New Zealand hops. That would be something.
What's your aim?
I actually have to put together a proposal for the next round of beers that we brew. So I'm going to stick it on there and see what reception it gets. And if not, try again later.
How about you, Phil? Anything you're
I
really?
suppose I'd love to do a lambic. I'm going to take my time on that one first. I have a few trials to do at home.
Right.
But yeah, no, I've had some very, very nice lambics the last year or two, and it's kind of, it's inspired me to give it a go. But in Ireland, it's not, it is popular, but it's not popular in a financial aspect, I suppose. Like, people will enjoy it and it'll go down well. But to do a batch and then sit on it, like, by all means, sit on it. But I suppose I would like to see it move. And I don't know. I'm a bit weary about it. I suppose I'll take the leap at some stage.
There's a brewery in the States, I think it's called Side Project.
Yeah.
Almost like you're talking about it as a side project, you know. And,
like, it's a trial and error. Like, I could do something small and release it, but I think lambic drinkers would be very critical. The same like Belgian drinkers would be, you know. I want to be very careful not to, I suppose, tick them off a little bit and not come out with a beer that I would stand over, you know. But I have a few tests to come up in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Very exciting.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. I hit it on the head.
Yeah, they seem to be getting, but I don't know, maybe it's not mass market, like you said, but there is definitely bigger interest in kind of lambic and wilder sort of beers, I think.
I couldn't stand lambics. If you give me a lambic 3 years ago, I'd be almost asking you what's wrong with it.
You'd be on Untapped complaining that you don't like it.
I'd Untapped, don't like lambic, and then bought it. But yeah, it was kind of one of those beers that I suppose grew on me, and it was the same as well with, like, I suppose, like French cheese. There was cheeses I couldn't stomach. Now I devour them. So I suppose my palate, like everyone else, I suppose that adapts. And like everything else, I suppose, you try it once, try it twice. Hopefully 3 times is a charm. But yeah, no, I'm hooked now at this stage.
But how about you, Matt? Anything you're...
Actually, the one that I am dying to brew is a gose, a fruited gose, and you talked about the one from Robin earlier, and that was like, when I opened the can and Katie turned around and she smelled the raspberries and the fruit coming out of it, I knew that she was going to give me a hard time, because ever since we opened, she asked me, brew me a gose, and I was like, yeah, we will. But again, the market that we live in and the reach that we have currently is not allowing us to make one and sell it fast enough. And I think we are there now. I think we can, around April, May, June timeframe, brew one for the summer month. But that's what I'm looking forward to be brewing soon. And actually, the Freddo Fox, that sample that we had was really interesting. It was very, very eye-opening in terms of the ABV and the flavor profile and the saltiness and just the balance throughout. So thanks, Robin, for putting me in trouble back home. But thank you for the market research.
All right, go for it.
All right, listen, guys, I'm going to let you go. I've held you for an hour and a half now, so I think it's about time you got a break. So thanks a million for taking the time, and thanks for just getting in touch and your trip to Barcelona and all that. So thanks for making that effort. It was a pleasure having you. Second, I'm going to do something here. So I'm going to finish up. I'm going to just play out a little video, just tell you that we've some coming up next week. If you're interested, we're actually going to have a theme on yeast, and we have Jan from Crom Haring in Netherlands, who also organizes Carnival Brettanomyces. We have Ammon from Eikentid up in Norway, who brew raw ales with all, their own house yeast that they've developed. And then just to bring in a bit of kind of the other side of it, we're going to bring in Legacy Cider as well, experiment with different yeast, because I don't normally hear yeast mentioned in cider production and that. So hopefully it'll be an interesting session. So I'm going to play out a little video just on that and say thank you to all 3 of you again. It was a pleasure having you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
And hopefully we might see you all again sometime.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cheers,
All
guys.
right.
Take care, guys. Bye.